episode number 132 of the LSR Podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by the brightest minds in all of the gaming industry. With me, I have Adam Candee. With me, I have a very special guest from across the pond. We have Brad Allen, if you want to follow those guys on the Twitter machine. And you should. It's free. At Adam Candee, 2 E's, no Y. At Brad Allen NFL. You want to follow me if you hate yourself, at Matt Brown M2. Of course, we're on all the places that you listen to your podcast, so be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll talk some New York. We'll talk some Canada. We will talk what's going on with BetMGM and what they said on their call this past week. We have a new player over there in Tennessee as well. And, of course, Adam will take us home with the just quick bits from all of the states around the country here. But, guys, let's go ahead and kick things off here with New York. And, Brad, I'll start with you. It was a long time coming. We waited forever for there to be mobile betting in New York. We finally get it, and a lot of people are enjoying the fact that they can bet mobily in New York.
Yeah, it turns out that New York is actually quite a big state filled with quite wealthy people who quite like to bet on sports. So I think 150 million bet over the first weekend, which is about what Pennsylvania is doing in a week. It's a little bit less than that. But obviously, brand new market, one weekend doing what Pennsylvania is doing in a week. Another way to think about it, within the first 10 days of New York, that's 1.2 million accounts were created. Nearly 900,000 of them were brand new, unique players, and that's more than New Jersey and Pennsylvania had live in that same period. So, there's a lot of figures suggesting New York is already the biggest betting state in the US.
And Adam, I mean, we should also throw in here that is not with that first weekend was not with the full slate of providers either. So, I mean, there will be, as Brad mentioned, that all those accounts weren't necessarily unique, but we're going to see people sign up for multiple accounts. We're going to see people who are, fairly savvy bettors understand that it's better to have multiple outs and stuff like that. So as we continue to get these people rolling into the state, we're going to see more and more and more and more accounts get signed up for.
Well, I guess the over hit on that one pro bettor's assertion that zero new people would be signing up in New York. The GeoComply data that we've seen thus far suggests that the average user has 1.3 accounts at the moment. That likely, of course, will increase, as you mentioned, Matt. And I think the other thing to keep in mind, 17 million geolocation pings. So there's a lot of just kind of trying it out and seeing what's what. And with the offers that have been out there, again, they're not going to last forever. But if you're getting $3,000 from one sportsbook, $1,000 from another sportsbook, you're going to continue to see signups at this pace for a while. You talk about what we're doing in one weekend versus what we're doing in a week in Pennsylvania. And I do think it's going to take a while for the water to sort of level out when it comes to New York versus New Jersey versus Connecticut, who's where, who lives where, who bets where, what apps are they using at what times, et cetera.
And Adam, just to follow up here for you, because you're, live in this country and everything. As we know, the Northeast is, unlike, I would even say, where you and I live out here, certainly in the South and all that, like the Northeast is into college basketball. Like college basketball is something the guys up there in the Northeast are really, really into. And so the fall off that we see, and even the NBA, look, the Nets are really, really good. The Knicks are at least scrappy. I'll let you go with what you think about the Knicks and all that. But I mean, basically what I'm saying is we're certainly going to see a fall off once NFL season goes away. That's just the natural progression of the sports betting cycle and all that. But in New York, though, I think it is uniquely positioned because the sports that are still ongoing past the NFL season are still super highly popular there.
Yeah, you mentioned college basketball, and for those who are not listeners of 130 plus episodes, I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up on college basketball more than anything. When it came to this time of year, this is what I think about. If you've never seen the 30 for 30 Requiem for the Big East, you should go watch to understand what it's like for Northeasters with basketball. I would add in also, it's a hugely popular hockey region. And you have the New York Rangers playing extremely well this year and getting some interest renewed in that team as well. So you're absolutely right about what the Northeast is and the fact that you're going to have them keeping some of that volume going beyond NFL season.
So with this, I'm sure it will be interesting for us to follow. I mean, specifically once we get into next NFL season, when we have a full 18 weeks of sample size here. But Adam, I mean, we do expect that this will do something at least to the New Jersey handle each month. There are some guys who are not going to be continuing to make that trek across the border if they don't have to. And but that being said, we do have big numbers out of there, at least currently.
Yeah, and I'll let Brad weigh in on this a little bit as well, because we've talked about the idea of where are the VIPs, right? Like, where are your whales? Are your whales in New York City and they've been coming to bet in Jersey? And frankly, where does a DraftKings or a FanDuel or an MGM that has been working on this in both states, where do they want them playing? It doesn't make a difference to them in any way where they're playing. So we'll figure out more about that. New Jersey just checked in with its numbers from last month, and they've registered a fourth consecutive month of handle over $1 billion. So the most interesting part isn't really so much the number as the fact that we might be starting to see a baseline here that we can at least work from to understand what the New York effect might be, right? Because we'd seen a little bit of fluctuation in Jersey with the pandemic and some of the effects that we saw from that. But now we have something that's pretty clear that throughout football season, throughout the NFL, it's been more than $1 billion in handle.
So, Brad, yeah, it is, look, like we said, not everybody is going to be taking that trek across the border or something like that. But, these VIPs that get incredible offers, and I'm sure there's been limos offered to, pick you up, and there's a bottle of champagne waiting, and they'll drive you across the border if that was the case before things got going there in New York. Is there still a benefit to the sports books having some of those bigger bettors continue their action in Jersey as opposed to New York?
Well, yes. I mean, it's the tax rate, isn't it? It's 51% compared to 12.5% in New Jersey, something like that, 14.5 maybe. Where do you want your revenue to come in at what tax rate? I've heard analysts make the argument that it might actually increase New Jersey handle because you sign the big fish up in New York, you find them now because you can go and advertise and all that, and then you get them over the border and you get them betting there. In the first 2 weeks of New York, so New Jersey averaged 12.6 million geolocation pings in the 2 weekends before New York launched, and that actually went up to 13.1 million average in the 2 weekends after New York launched. So everyone was sort of predicting New Jersey was going to drop off significantly. We've not seen it yet, and we might not see it.
Adam, I'm not a big champagne guy, but hey, if somebody wanted to come pick us up in a limo and maybe have a small batch bourbon waiting on us or something, and then take us across the border into Arizona to go bet, I'd be down. I'd be down. Just saying, just throwing it out there.
I think you and I should put in that request. We're doing it right now. We're right out here to all the operators who listen. If you would like to come throw us a lifeline to the Nevada apps that we deal with on a daily basis and let us come be your Arizona whales, we're down.
Yeah, there it is. I love it. I mean, small batch bourbon though. I'm not a champagne guy. I don't know. You do the bubbly? I don't do the bubbly.
Really, how much time have we spent together? And you're asking me if I'm going to take.
Just making
no,
sure.
It's Dom or bust, sir. Otherwise, you can just shove whatever bourbon down my throat you like.
Obviously, yes. Only Ace of Spades magnums for Adam. All right, Brad. So let's talk about the. Listen, I mean, this is something that we knew was going to happen, right? I mean, if they're launching, there's going to be an advertising blitz. So what has it looked like so far in New York?
Yeah, well, so I wrote this story after seeing the backlash on my own social media account. I think I follow a load of people from finance, from just sports in general, from crypto and everything. And suddenly everyone was saying, like, what the hell has happened in New York? What have we done here? Because every single ad I'm seeing is for sports betting. And it's insane. I mean, there was I think there was tweets saying let's give the gambling industry back to the mob. At least they're quiet about it. I mean, like they really got in the face of the finance world there. I mean, there was one financial column out there saying, is this the reason that gambling stocks are going down? Because all these Wall Street types are suddenly seeing, look, there's $3,000. They're giving away $3,000. Some of the platforms don't work. They're advertising on every single medium all the time, and they're also paying 51% tax. This doesn't add up. Sell the stock. So I would say it's not. Yeah, there's been a lot of advertising, and it's not gone super well for some of the operators. I mean, Caesar's got a shout out from State Senator Joseph Adabo saying, "Pull yourself together, lads." So yeah, they've not done too well in the early days there, I think.
Adam, we look at that, and again, I just always circle back to the deal of kind of like, I guess I'm numb to it, and so I guess though when you haven't been getting it, that it certainly like stands out. I guess the thing that was surprising to me, and maybe it was just because it was such a big deal made of the fact that it did go legal or something like that, but I guess I just assumed there was a bunch of ads running in New York as it was anyway because of Jersey and because of the winter. So like, I guess I just assumed that all these ads were running anyway.
Well, I think there are a couple factors at play also. This didn't launch during week 6 of the NFL season.
Yeah.
This launched in the final week of the regular season with a lot of very heavily watched
island games.
Island games.
All island games.
Imagine with the Raiders and Chargers game, if you're glued to your TV watching that madness, you're getting hit up by JB Smoove over and over and over again. So, yeah, there's no avoiding it, and especially carrying that over to week 1 of the playoffs. So I think you're right. I think that you have to assume that there was some going on in Jersey. But, when we were talking to folks on the early days of this, it was more targeted, right? It was more at path train stops and places where you knew you had crossover from New Jersey to New York and vice versa.
Right. Guys, we get tweets sometimes here, and we were able to get an interesting question here. We like to do predictions. Too bad this is Dustin's not here to be wrong, and because typically his predictions, don't work out. But glad to have you here, Brad, for this. Twitter question comes in and says, predict the first month's handle for the state of New York. And so if we look here, if we look at January, we're going to have NFL playoffs all the way through January, right? Because now that with the extra week in the season, the Super Bowl is an extra week. So that Pro Bowl week is actually the first week of February as opposed to last week of January. So we are going to have NFL football all the way through January, as we just talked about. Hey, they like hockey there. They like college basketball there. The Nets are doing really, really well in the NBA. So there's a lot of reason for, and of course, the shiny new toy. So when it's all said and done, and we are talking about January 2022 for New York, what do you think the handle will be for the state?
So my base rate here is this 150 million on that opening weekend, and then some of these geolocation pings being above New Jersey. So I'm thinking it's got to come in like over under 1.1 billion. Is that bold, Adam? What do you think?
I think it's a little bit bold, but I'm not going to say it's outlandish considering the interest in the NFL. I'll dial it back slightly and say I think we probably come in under $1 billion for the first month, just because the Super Bowl is going to fall in February. So I'll play it a little more conservative. I was going to add, so we had 150 million on the weekend, right? I was going to add, let's say, between a third and a half for each week of the rest of the month and bring it in around 900.
I was going to say 899.5 and ask you guys over under. So I mean, there we have it, guys. I mean, that's a good line right there. I mean, one of the other things I think it's worth mentioning, right, is even the people that were making that drive over to Jersey to make their bets because that's where it was legal and that's where it was the easiest. Let's not forget that's all pregame stuff, right? I mean, like that is like they're not going and hanging out like over there, right? I mean, like they were going, making their bets and then going back home. So now you add in the in-game factor for these people as well. And so that's a whole new thing that they haven't really had access to, because I mean, I don't think there was a lot of people just hanging out in the bus station over in Jersey, like sweating the games and stuff. They were heading back to their apartments in the city. So, that 20 to 25% that we kind of estimated, at least early on, that was coming from New York, if a good bit of that is heading back into New York, and then now you add in the in-game aspect of everything, the numbers I think could be pretty damn interesting.
These bonuses have got to get played through as well. If you've got your $3,000 bet or whatever, you've got to either keep playing or you lose it, right? So that counts on this GGR number. So
All right, so Brad, let's talk a little bit about our friends up north. Shout out to Julian, who is a weekly listener to the podcast here up in the Great White North. Let's talk about Canada.
Yes, another potential delay in Canada online sports betting and gaming. Originally meant to go live last December. Obviously, we missed that. It looked like it was end of Q1, so probably March time. And now there's another potential spanner in the works. A local casino company, Great Canadian, they issued sent a report to the Ontario government saying that this planned online sports betting scheme, the framework, is going to basically cost them a load of money, which is obviously then going to hurt tax revenues. They're going to lose 2,500 jobs. Well, they have 2,500 jobs, so that they're going to lose some of them if this goes through. And it's a spanner in the works, essentially, because this is an influential company. It does employ a lot of people. And it is an election coming up on June the 2nd in Ontario. So, I spoke to a couple of people in the industry out there. What's going to happen? No one knows, obviously. But there is some concern that the government doesn't want to rock the boat ahead of that election. So let's just push everything. Let's push the launch after that, possibly start of Q3 now and go from there. But we should get some more clarity within the next couple of days when the government actually confirms that, because there's still no launch date actually announced at any point yet.
So when we look up here, Adam, I mean, this is one of those, again, this is one of the states where we have been keeping one of the topics here on the podcast, we've been keeping a really sharp eye on, because as you mentioned, I mean, like, listen, I know that we, here in the States, we think that we are the epicenter of everything and that the whole world revolves around us. But if you look up there, I mean, specifically Ontario, specifically the Toronto area, I mean, that is a whole lot of people and a pretty good market in and of itself. And then, of course, you can just add in the rest of the country. There are, there's Montreal and there's Vancouver and whatnot with the other cities there. But I mean, it's a big deal.
You rube provinces. We're talking about provinces and the province of Ontario and the potential huge market that it is getting gummed up here by a land-based operator. There are interesting parts to this for me. First of all, are we really almost 4 years into this in the U.S.? Are we still going to do the cannibalization argument? Are we still going back to, does online take away from land-based? It is such a dinosaur argument that shows no understanding of how this market has worked in the U.S. or elsewhere for that matter. Secondly, I'm surprised by the timing of this. I'm surprised that this is coming out now as opposed to during what was a long process over the last few months prior to get it legalized in Canada. But, last gasp effort to sort of see if they can affect the framework, and maybe it's possible. I don't know. I'm going on Brad's information, more than anything else here, and I think that it's worth reading that article up at legalsportsreport.com if you're trying to get a fuller picture of what's going on in Ontario.
So, Brad, let's kick to a different operator here, and it's really not even an operator. It's the talking head for said operator, and that's Barstool Sportsbook. Portnoy is a guy with just like a massive following, huge social media presence, and love him, hate him, somewhere in the middle. It doesn't really matter when he talks and when he starts putting things out. It gets heard, and it certainly makes it to a whole bunch of eyeballs and a whole bunch of ears as well. And so he is trying to rattle some cages down there in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting coming from covering the European gambling market to the US, because you get these characters like Portnoy, which just do not exist over here. Mm-hmm. So he comes out, he puts out a Twitter video going, "I'm here to save Florida sports betting." It seems like FanDuel and DraftKings have got on the phone and said, "Look, we need our million signatures to get this sports betting question on the ballot." In November, we're way short. Can you help us? So yeah, he's got 6.7 million social media followers. He called himself the closer, but it does look a bit like they've left it way too late. Again, I saw some people criticizing these guys, like, why have you left it so late? Why are you doing this all now? Because you've got 10 days. You still need about 500,000 or 600,000 signatures, which is more than 30,000 a day. Even over the last 2 weeks or so, they're going about 5,000 new signatures a day. there's no guarantee they'll even be verified because they take 30 days to verify them. So it's just been left really, really late, and it seems quite a slapdash operation for a very important sports betting state. And it looks like it's not going to get done, despite calling in Portnoy the closer.
Adam, look, we're not going to talk personal feelings here because that's neither here nor there when it comes to Portnoy. But I mean, listen, if we're talking about someone, though, that does have a big voice, that can reach a lot of people in a very quick amount of time, he would be that person. And probably, as far as things go in the sports betting industry, probably the biggest voice when it comes to the easiest way to reach the biggest amount of people, right? I mean, and especially the people who would act upon something that was being said by that person, right? I mean, I don't know for sure what, Peyton and Eli's combined social media following is. I have no idea. I don't know what, some of these other social media guys, Jamie Foxx's and things and whatnots, but they don't have the power over their followings that a guy like Portnoy has.
Brad said something a moment ago that I'm very jealous of. He said, we don't have characters like that over here. I'm considering a flight. So when we look at what's going on in Florida, I'm going to put my political hat back on here for a minute and go back to my previous life and say that if Dave Portnoy is trying to reach a bunch of people with social media, I'm not going to immediately look and say, wow, he's got X million followers. Look at what this is going to do. You have to ask any number of obvious questions. First of all, how many are in Florida? How many are eligible to vote in Florida? And then I'll get really into the main question here. How many are even registered to vote in Florida, right? You're asking for a big lift over a short period of time here and asking for people to get fired up about something that, frankly, I don't know that they're going to get particularly fired up about if they weren't already interested, right? DraftKings and FanDuel have been at this signature collection for months now. And Portnoy came in saying, oh, yeah, they talk crap about me and now they want my help and now everybody needs go out and do it, go out and do it. And Brad's point is exactly the right one. Where have you been if you wanted to get this done, right? Trying to get these signatures not only collected but verified, it's a massive process that if you look at California, this has been happening over the course of years almost. When you go back to what happened with the initial tribal betting petition that they had to get an extension on when the pandemic first hit. So these are not small-time operations. And so I'm not saying that the DraftKings FanDuel operation has been small-time, but the fact that they're so short and having to resort to these kind of measures this late in the game is not encouraging.
So, Adam, I'm going to go back to you here, and let's talk a little bit about BetMGM. They had their call. They were talking about what's going on with sports betting. It looks like they are going to pump some more money into it, as we would imagine. There's still expansion to be done and still some things to be done in the markets that they're already in. But some interesting, one specifically, some interesting stuff that came out of there. We'll talk to Brad about that in a second. But, look, overall, I think they said a lot of what we expected them to say along the lines of whenever you're trying to spark interest in a product.
Matt, just get out the shovel, reach into your giant pile of cash, and throw a little bit more into the furnace. $450 million is the headline number out of the call for investors from the joint venture between Entain and MGM Resorts. That is the next round of investment that they're throwing into this. Of course, compared to the billion that Caesars has said it's going to spend and is clearly is on its way to doing, that doesn't even sound all that large. But I think what's interesting here is a number of things. We'll get to Brad's point in a minute about some of the parlay products and what they're leading to. You heard MGM tout the fact that it is number 2 in some places, number 3 in others. Depends on the metric you use, depends on what period of time you're looking at. I think the important thing to note is they talked about their presence in New Jersey. They talked about their presence in Michigan, and the fact that they expect to be cash positive in those states sooner than later. And that's more about iGaming than it is about sports betting. And I think that's sort of one of those storylines as we watch in 2022 and 2023 is going to be how successful are lobbyists going to be in getting iGaming passed in a larger number of states. And the cross-sell is something that was on the investor call. I actually think that story that we have up at LSR.com right now is a great story. If you're someone who doesn't really get the industry side of this as much as you'd like to, that investor call gives you a pretty good breakdown of how one major player is looking at this whole thing. So they talked about some upcoming launches in Illinois, in Louisiana. That Illinois launch, by the way, has been long time coming, and we're looking at nearly a year past the application for MGM to get into that state. So we'll see. MGM continues to make a major push after that first year, Matt, where we looked at year one and we were like, what is BetMGM doing? They're nowhere. We don't understand this and that. And then we saw them pick it up year two, and they've really made a good effort since that point. It's kind of like seeing what Caesars has done over the past year after having seen them not do a whole lot in their first couple of years.
Brad, there was one thing that came out of that call that I know I saw you get kind of active on the old Twitter machine about, that kind of raised your eyes.
Yeah, it was, I believe BetMGM said that the average hold on their same game parlays is more than 30% on average, which is, it's an astronomical figure when you think about it. I mean, so someone reached out to me, an analyst type, and said, you sound surprised. And I guess in my head, I was going, New Jersey, I think they say they hold around 17, 18% on parlays in the long term. So, obviously that's also a ludicrous figure, but, yeah, but you nearly double it to 30%. That's just a huge chunk, and it must be, you must be getting through customers. Like, you can't be losing 30% of every bet, and you can't hang around too long. But I mean, it's the other thing I put in that Twitter thread is that it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because these products can be beaten if you're a customer as well. BetMGM was saying we need to spend the next year working on this product, and a key part of that is working on the algorithms, working on the pricing, working on the correlation. If the 49ers, if Eli Mitchell goes over 79.5 yards and he scores a touchdown, do the 49ers win? What does that do there? And these aren't nailed down still, a lot of these things, because think of an NFL game and all those props. There's a correlation in there, but if you can say perfectly what it is yet, I don't think the operators can. So there is opportunity for players as well. It's just tricky, because are you one of the idiots doinking off 30%, or are you one of these geniuses that can actually win because you can work out the correlations better?
I tell you, yeah. I mean, look, as a sports bettor who does not have these available to me here in Nevada, I would love to have them available. And I would go in understanding fully that I'm not getting the exact payout, but also I think that's weirdly, in a way, I think that's fair, because you're allowed to put in these bets like you're talking about that are so incredibly correlated that it would be, I mean, these just wouldn't exist if they paid you out at the exact rate, because people would destroy these. I mean, I'm not saying I would be a destroyer of these. I would say I would go down trying. I'll put it that way. Like, I would go down trying, because I mean, there's just, if you have a game script in your head as to how a game is going to go, and you can sit there and say, like, okay, if this game goes like this, then this, and this are going to happen. And that is all like correlated in that. I mean, Adam, we know a guy that is, he's extremely rich as it is anyway, and Cal Spears, who just hit one of these monster same game parlays, because he just, again, he's a sharp dude. He had a game script. He sat there and he went through whatever, won $250,000 doing it, and it's one of those things where I think, I understand that maybe a bettor who's not quite as savvy doesn't understand that it's not paying out like an exact parlay would. But I think if you are kind of savvy or something like that, I think you'd rather have them at your disposal, even knowing that you're not getting the correct payout, than not have them at all. That's speaking from someone who isn't able to bet these type of things.
Well, Matt, as you and I have discussed ad nauseum, we have one book in Nevada that offers what I would call a full prop menu. And who knows? The better you get at that book, you might not get to even keep playing there. So it's entirely possible. But when you talk about props, I start from the beginning before we even get to parlaying them, and start to the fact that they're not always that well priced in the first place, right? So you potentially are getting two ways to go at this, where the prop might not be parlayed all that well, I should say priced all that well in the first place, and now you're getting the chance to get a multiplier on that with a parlay.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I understand there's a lot of people out there who scream and complain up and down, like, they don't pay you out at, like, at the right price. I'm like, you get to do it. Shut your mouth. I don't even get to do it. I don't want to hear your nonsense of this. It's not even an option for me. Like, it's not even an option. Brad, let's talk about Tennessee. We've got a very interesting new Well, I mean, it's not new to you. It's not new to you. It's new to us here.
Yes. So a product called Wager. Their whole concept is essentially friend-to-friend betting. You like the 49ers this weekend. I like the Packers. I'll send you a wager for $10 or whatever. You accept it. We both pay 5%. And on we go. And it's interesting. I would say we've seen almost this exact same product. There was literally a company called Wager a couple of years ago with this exact idea, the exact same pitch. It's quite startling to see it again. And what they found is there wasn't necessarily a market. Like if you're betting with an actual close friend, you WhatsApp about the bet and then you PayPal it or you Venmo it, whatever. If you're betting big money, it's some sort of dark pool or you've got an agent on your WhatsApp, whatever, you don't want to pay 5% on a 10 grand bet or whatever. Yeah. So it does end up the smaller bettors, and then you're getting 5% of $10, and you're not getting lots and lots. You're not making money off the parlays, off the same game parlays, off in-game betting. Like it's just a small cut, a small pot, and not a lot of people really needed it. So I have spoken to this company. They're lovely people, and it's they're built more than I ever have. So who am I to say? It's just it's I think it's a tough industry to try that kind of thing.
Yeah, Adam, that's basically what I would say with it. Right? It's just like the volume you would have to have, I think, to turn this into an actual real big moneymaker. I just don't know if it's there. And listen, that gets us into the whole like betting exchanges just in general. Could that even work? If it wasn't even friend betting, if it was just like, Brad's able to do that overseas. And that's one of the things that is very, very, very prevalent over there. Our betting exchanges is to where like here it's just not a thing. Because again, if you had to do that state by state by state by state, is there enough volume? Is there enough liquidity? Is there enough people out there who are willing to do that? Now, if we had a nationwide exchange system, yeah, I think it could work for sure. There's enough bettors where a nationwide exchange system could work, but I don't know if this is going to be big enough in our current state, the way that we have this all fragmented.
Yeah, there were some who shall remain nameless who were out there on social today calling this a milestone event, and no, it's not. Like, this is not new. It's not new. It's not news. It's something that is a very small news item that strikes me strangely in a couple of ways. First of all, I'm kind of surprised they launched this as a standalone. This to me feels like something that should have been a B2B play, that you try to find a way with all of the large sports books who want to have a good social component, that maybe you try to find a way to build this thing as something that can be rolled into a larger product, because trying to compete with the big boys on your 5% cut, you're just not going to get the people that you need in, right? We talked about the liquidity. It's the age-old question when it comes to the U.S. How do you get the liquidity, but with the right type of bettors who are either doing the volume or, frankly, aren't savvy enough to destroy these things? So, I don't really understand what the ultimate plan is here. One thing I would mention, I'm going to plug some content that was over at thelines.com last week. Brad said, yeah, you WhatsApp, you set the bet up, and you do it through PayPal or Venmo. Watch out when it comes to that, because PayPal and Venmo are onto this, and there have been some reported crackdowns recently on people transferring money via PayPal and Venmo for fantasy leagues and the like. They seem to be getting a little more wise to this whole thing and don't want their service being used in a way that isn't going to give them a cut of these activities.
And Brad, just for the people that aren't familiar with, the betting markets over in Europe or whatever, I mean, do you do the majority of your betting on exchanges, or like what percent would you say that you do your betting when it comes to exchanges and then just traditional sports books?
Baseball betting, I would pretty much like 95% on an exchange, because, obviously just you're betting sides and totals and you just want the best price. Obviously you can't really do props. Like even on soccer, which is obviously much bigger here, there's no liquidity whatsoever on like goal scorers or any props at all. So you need your books for that. In-game trading is probably another use case for exchanges. It is quite fun to buy the Packers at 20% and sell them when they take the lead or whatever. So yeah, it's good for money lines and spreads and some in-game stuff. But there's a reason all these books are pushing same game parlays because it's more fun, and you'll find even the exchanges here, the most common customer feedback they get is why can't I parlay this? Like why can't I make a parlay? Right. So obviously there's a vocal minority going, where are many exchanges? But the truth is that even they're 10% of the market here, and that's obviously with huge institutional money going through them. Right. So for the vast majority of customers, they are a side hustle.
Adam, take us home with our state roundup, my man.
Happy to, my friend. Let's go back to the great state of Washington, where we haven't been for a while. And we've mentioned the lawsuit that was filed by Maverick Gaming and their attempts to open up the market beyond tribal. And what we're seeing with that is we finally got a hold of the CEO of Maverick Gaming, Eric Persson, of course, based in Las Vegas, but operate the card rooms up in Washington. He said he doesn't expect a quick resolution to this because they're suing in part based on an argument that IGRA, the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, is in some ways not valid. So they think this might end up at the Supreme Court. Go and read that story by Matthew Waters over at LegalSportsReport.com. Matthew also has a story there about Mississippi, where once again we are seeing a bill to legalize real mobile in Mississippi. This is the third time we've seen it in 4 years. There are multiple bills. I will point out there is one bill that should be set on fire the moment it is dropped into the hopper. There's an in-person registration requirement. Fine. We've seen that before. We know it doesn't work very well. It artificially limits the market. But here's the kicker. It would require you to go back to the casino once every 12 months to renew your account. What and why? We have wheels, many of them. They are all round and they all roll down the street. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't make any sense. There are models out there for how this works everywhere. Get it together. Oh, by the way, Maryland had some meetings. They're still no closer to getting mobile going. That's going to be late 2022 if we're lucky. That's going to be one of those things where every couple months we bring it up and every couple months it's no closer.
Guys, as always, everything we talk about here on the pod, you can find the written words over at LegalSportsReport.com. So be sure and head over there and take in all of and it's written in American English as well. So it's even though Brad is across the pond, it is written in American English.
Well,
right?
actually,
we do translate, right?
Actually, I do. I can say that I do run this through my filter, and I get a good laugh every time I get an English U or a license with a C at the end or one of those things. And I always just kind of like, aw, yeah.
Oh, look at that. Isn't that, a favor, F-A-V-O-U-R? Yeah, I know. Yeah, so anytime we get those. So anyway, awesome stuff over there. And, of course, you should follow these guys on the Twitter machine. At Adam Candee, that's 2 E's, no Y. At Brad Allen NFL. And if you hate yourself, you can follow me at Matt Brown M2. For Brad, for Adam, I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.